now. What do you use at the moment, Laurence, before you implement Green 4? How do you do it currently?
Yeah, I mean, for us, obviously, we're a little bit lower level than these guys, so our budgets in medical department, sports science department's pretty small. It's only been the last 2 years that sports science and strength conditioning has been brought into our first team, so it's all relatively new for us. In terms of what we do at the moment is basic Excel spreadsheets around players. In the mornings we have questionnaires players have to fill in, just monitoring fatigue, muscle soreness, sleep patterns, etc. So we try and detect early if we have players that may put up red flags. But obviously the situation is, we're predominantly working on myself, it's not always able to analyse that information before we go out and train, so it's having that information rather than necessarily able to use it when we need to use it. Obviously, say, small medical department. So yeah, mainly at Excel spreadsheets, but the big thing is how can we measure players' overall training loads, training volumes in the week. Again, at the moment it's trying to get as much information as we can, correlate that data, but again, being a one-man band is difficult. So obviously always use that information, get it how you want it, and then analyse it and adapt what you're doing from that. So at the moment we've got the bare basics, but we're looking with the system how much further we can now step on and actually use the information we're collecting to have a positive effect on our players' performance, say obviously injury prevention.
So having someone in the club in your role, is that quite a revolutionary step for a club like Southend, or are we finding most clubs in the Football League would now have at least an individual responsible for it, even if they don't have all the tools to do the job?
Yeah, I think these guys will probably agree about the last couple of years, as what's already been said, it's obviously stepping on a lot, probably still a little bit behind other sports, sports like rugby where it's obviously been in a lot longer, but obviously football's kicking on now and football players are looked more at athletes now as opposed to just footballers when they come in and train in the morning, go home at lunchtime and that's it, that's not their training day anymore. It's a lot more around how they're looking after themselves in terms of nutrition, say the strength and conditioning side of things, which has evolved massively. But I would have thought most clubs now maybe would have someone, whether it's on a full-time or part-time basis, but I'd expect the higher you go up, the bigger that'll go in terms of what the team they've got around them.
So do you think there's some pressure on vendors like Green 4? Is there a gap in the market where now you've got the expertise in the clubs, the systems are now slightly lacking behind what the expectations of the performance coaches is? You said yourself that you'd written something, so there must have been...
I have, yeah. I've been almost buy a copy, I've got an old CD there. But, yeah, there is a gap in the market. In just terms of the numbers of strength conditioning coaches who are working in football, I think it was less than 100 was the count of recent conference I was at. But it's estimated that within 2 years they'll go over 200 in terms of strength conditioning coaches who are working and delivering. In rugby, I've worked in rugby league and done some work in rugby union. But in terms of the number of staff who are delivering programs there, you'll have 4 strength conditioning staff working with your first grade team. If you're maybe 30 players. So the numbers that we have working at our clubs are a lot less, but the amount of cash coming through for players' budgets is huge. So there's a big discrepancy there, and it is a gap in the market that needs to be filled and recognised. But it's also an evolution of football coaches, and the word old school, and it's a bad word, I don't like that, but it's the coaches who are recognising the process which is taking place in modern sport. And there's an awful lot going on there in terms of educating our coaches. We're really lucky at Sheffield United, and I know Leicester are very lucky also that they've got forward-thinking coaches and are recognising the requirements of strength conditioning. So yes, the market's going to expand very, very quickly over this next few years, and there is a gap in the market where the products isn't the products available to do what we want to do, which Green 4 are producing. And I'm not a client yet, so I'm not getting paid to do this, but that's what you're doing, which is great. That's why we're working and have a good relationship to try and build further processes at our club to make us more successful. So there is a gap in the market there which needs to be filled. And the recognition of your coaches and getting them to see the power that can be achieved from it will be quite remarkable. So where this sport is going, from where it was when I first came into it, my first day I was going to get sacked. What do we need a strength conditioning coach for? This is back in 1999. now it's just standard place. Of course you need a strength conditioning coach, and of course you do serious warm-ups, and then you need masseurs, and you need a good resource for your medical, and a good resource for your coaches. So, we're just accelerating at such a rate, and so we need to make sure that we've got the ability to manage all that information, because we're still making mistakes. We still make mistakes, and what you're saying there about our players and their readiness to train, and they still slip through, and that costs us money. So, unfortunately, when we make mistakes, it costs tens of thousands. So we've got to make sure that we minimise those. We're just trying to turn the percentages. So, the opportunity to change those percentages, whether it be with your customer who's coming through to buy a replica shirt, or on the strength conditioning side of it, we need to change those percentages our way. So that's what we're looking to do. So, that's why I'm here today.
So, Andy, you obviously saw the need for systems as well. What were the key things that it had to do? What were the things that you couldn't do with the processes you had in place already?
I think initially, as Laurence was saying, in terms of everything we collected was kind of recorded in spreadsheets individually, and so we've got a department which is very inquisitive. We want to look into everything that we're collecting. If we're collecting this information, why are we collecting it? And what you would find is, okay, you'd see something in maybe someone's muscle soreness score, but then the next question is, what does that link to something else? And then the issue then is, how do you compare these two different things? Is one having a knock-on effect on the other? Is there a combination of things which are affecting their performance? Or maybe a player would pick up an injury, and that would trigger you then to look back over their previous few weeks of training. And it'd be a case of, where do you look? What do you look at? Do you look at two things together? Do you look at one thing as opposed to another? And there's just hundreds and hundreds of questions that get thrown up. The more things you look at, the more questions that are asked.
Yeah.
The more people you've got working in your sports science and in your conditioning, the more processes you go for, the more data you collect, the more things you have to look into. So as it grows, the questions and the possibilities are growing as well. And that's where the need for the system comes in, I think, in terms of having everything in front of you to be able to easily look through, and maybe, it doesn't jump out at you and tell you this is the problem, but it makes it a lot easier to look through and look for potential areas to follow up on and look and dig deeper into. I think that's the benefit of having a system in place.
Was it just a difficult thing to manage? Was it, you had this data, but you just couldn't get it together and combine it?
Largely, yeah. I think it was a bit of a day-to-day process to start with. So the players would come in every day, and we measure their hydration. We look at their heart rate data after training. We look at their muscle soreness, but you'd see it on a one-day snapshot, if you like. So we go, right, whose hydration was poor today, or who had muscle soreness today, and then to go, right, well, he was high. The next step to then go, well, what was he yesterday? I'd like to open another sheet, or what have you, or what's he been like over the week, and things like that. It was a case of, it was a lot harder just to pull things from even a short time ago to look for patterns. It was more of a day-to-day kind of, we were collecting the data, we were looking at it, but then you'd almost put it to one side, and you'd be relying on kind of people's memory, if you like, to say, oh, I think he was, might have been bad a couple of days ago as well. You might have to look into it that way. So if it's easy enough to say, you've got a red flag in front of you, and you can click on the flag, okay, what's he done recently? Is this a couple he's had in a couple of days, or is this a one-off? If it's a one-off, has he done anything differently? It makes it easier to, it makes you want to dig in a bit more and actually find the information, because it's there under in front of you, ready to be dug into.
And you said, Laurence, that part of the issue was the fact that you got some of the data just before training, and there just wasn't time to analyse the data to have any impact on that training programme, because it was all too short notice, pretty much.
Yeah, that's right. So, for example, in the morning, by the time the players come in, they don't all come in together at the same time. So the time we've got all the players in, they've all through that questionnaire, I might already be out setting out for the warm-up. So by the time the information is actually been recorded, it's too late for me to actually do anything about it. Got an intern in this year who helps me collect data, which we're looking to do again with the system, which primary role will be to input the data and basically manage the system, so we can use that information on a day-to-day basis rather than saying, we look back over the last week, he was, the reason he's got injured there, we see on Monday he was sore, Tuesday he didn't sleep, and then on Friday he's